We're back, and so when we last left off, we're talking about value. We were talking about the two major parts to value contrast. One, the range, right, the difference from the darkest dark to the lightest light, versus the speed of gradation, and how both of them contribute to a sense of how much value contrast a work of art has. So here are two works, both with low amount of value contrast. Notice that this work, even though it has a very narrow range, still has a sense of being pretty high contrasty because the sense that the light is shining so directly and so scathingly on Rouen Cathedral there. But in both of these pieces, this low contrast, especially the narrow range of value, really kind of heightens the sense of a quiet mood. In these two works, value contrast is being used for compositional effects in almost exact opposite ways. In this painting by Toyo, the area that has the most dark value really stands out against a painting that is primarily very, very light and light mid values, just these very, very faint washes. So this one area here really becomes a focus and an emphasis in the painting. Whereas in the Caravaggio painting, it's the opposite. The area that has the brightest spots of light are the things that really draw our attention, and the areas that go into dark values they're the shadows, and they get a lot less of our attention. So, how value also affects the way compositions work. We've already talked about this a little bit when we were talking about shape and shape grouping, and we discussed value grouping. But let's look at the Raft and Medusa again one more time to really see how that value grouping works, right? And once again, try your best to squint your eyes. Squint as strongly as you can so that you can still barely see the image, and you can really see how all the light shapes kind of group together and become this kind of like, and they make these larger arcs, and they link together. And the linking of these languorous shapes also help kind of contribute with this sense of like the movement of the composition moving us towards certain areas, like to there. All right, and the same is true with the dark shapes. The dark shapes also kind of like languorously or a little bit more energetically writhe through the artwork, and they help move our eye from one area to another. And they become kind of a counterpoint, and we'll talk about this some more a little later on. Those languorous lines of the value groupings are kind of a counterpoint to the more geometric lines that are the underlying geometric organization of the painting. And here are three paintings that are also kind of a contrast in terms of thinking about different ways of using value and value range, right? In Madame X, we have a pretty extreme range of value. We have darks that are about as dark as you could possibly get in an oil painting, and lights that are also quite light, not maybe pure white, but quite light. In Whistler's painting, we do have some spots of really dark values, but on the whole, most of the values are very, very light, and so much of the painting is this contrast of like white to off-white kind of contrast. And what's interesting about that is how we don't really feel like it's a low contrast painting, despite the fact that there is so much of the painting that is, in those very narrow ranges. Whereas Richter's painting is much more in the mid-value, but still, it's organized around where are lights and where are darks. I think that might be the last page for this lecture. All right, so that ends up value. And next, we're going to talk about page composition.